Okay, Rabotai, we are in the middle of Hilchot Lash, the halachas of the malacha of Lash. Lash is kneading, kneading with a K. Now, last week we started, and we had a good start to it, and we defined some practicalities of the malacha. I just want to mention a couple of quick things. Actually, one main thing I wanted to mention right here. The Yalkut Yosef English edition, when it starts the introduction of Lash on page 391, he says the malacha of Lash is quite complicated. Therefore, no one should assume what the rule is in any particular instance without consulting a rabbi. Okay, without consulting a competent rabbi, because you're going to see today that a lot that we learned when it comes to the actual practical situations, there's a lot of different sirus or stuff that you can add together to allow certain things. So let's begin today's shir by simply reviewing in 5-10 minutes, reviewing last week's shir, so just so we have the principles all together. Okay, so Lash is kneading. The Gemara had a question: at what stage is kneading? Is it when you add the water to the flour, or is it when you work the flour? And it was Machloket, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Lehalacha, we said that the Rambam and Rosh and the Shulchan Aruch say the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, that the malacha of Lash, the Torah, the biblical, the right malacha of Lash, is when you work when you knead it, when you actually do the kneading. The other part of just adding the water is a rabbinic, it's a derabanan, it's a rabbinic prohibition. Whereas the Ashkenazic poskim, the Ramah, the Sefer HaTruma, the Yereim, they all say the halacha is really like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and therefore even adding water would be a problem. We are going to see today that in places of a tzarech, even Ashkenazim poskim would say the halacha is like really Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, but we're machmer. They are machmer like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, but the halacha is really like Rabbi Yossi Yehuda. So in cases of need, they would allow like Sephardim certain situations, because when it's rabbinic, you can do stuff in a shinoi. When it's a doraita, you can't. Okay, so in a makam tzarech, Ashkenazim would allow, like Sephardim, to do with the shinoi. We're going to get into that eventually. Okay, then the next thing that we learned last week was what's called bar gibul or lav bar gibul or ein bar gibul, which was if the item is not kneadable. Okay, you can't actually work it, but it becomes one mass, but it's not like dough. Okay, it's not dough. It's not dough, but it's one mass. Okay, here's an example. You make tuna fish with mayo. Okay, so you added a liquidy mayo into the tuna, right, or the egg salad. It all becomes one mass, but it doesn't look like dough, right? That is lav bar gibul. The prime example is bran, right? What they give the animals to eat. You pour water into it, so it doesn't become a dough, but it becomes a thick consistency, right? It becomes somewhat of one mass. So that's called a lav bar gibul, okay, and something that can't be kneaded. The question by something that not be kneaded, where the only thing is adding the water, right? Is adding the water the problem? Is it a problem or not? Meaning, can I add the water? So Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, he says adding water is never a problem, right? It's just the actual kneading. Here, there is no kneading. So what would Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda hold? So that's a machlokas in the Gemara of Abaye and Rabbi Yosef, right? Of what exactly would they hold? According to Abaye, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda would hold when it comes to something that's not kneadable, even adding water is the problem. According to Rabbi Yosef, that adding water would not be a problem. All right. The problem only would be mixing it because it looks like you're mixing, and you're looks like when you're mixing it looks like you're kneading, right? Looks like mechazeh, like lash, but it's not actually lash. It's the rabbanon. Therefore, they would hold with the shinui that would be permissible. Okay, a lav bar gibel, something that can't be kneaded. You can add water, no problemo. There's no issue with the water. It doesn't become anything when you add water. Mixing it would be a problem, so you do it with the shinui. Mixing would be a derabanan, so you would have to mix it with the shinui. Okay, that's lav bar gibel. Then we dealt with the situation when it's a lav bar gibel, something you can't knead. We said there are types of mixtures. There are some that are thicker, and some that are very runny, and some that are very liquid. Okay, so the ones that are very liquidy is not a problem at all. Even if I add, for example, you want to make Similac or formula, Materna, whatever they have, these different formulas for the baby, right? And you want to add it into the water, right? What happens in the end? You still have a liquid. You're not having a syrup. You're not having something macted, right? Adding coffee into the water, instant coffee. Adding chocolate powder, right? Hot cocoa into the water. It all remains a liquid. So that is not a problem at all. Then you have a runny mixture, right? That is what's called raka or racha, which is something that is very runny. What's runny? Thin. What's thin? Thin is I can take it from one cup, pour it into the next, and it all moves together. Okay, it moves together. Here he gives an example like chocolate. When you have melted chocolates. Okay, melted chocolate is not in the Tzurba. This is in a different sefer. This is in Shabbat Volume 2 of Rabbi Rimon. And here he shows. I'm just saying that's an example of something that's runny. Pancake batter. Oh, very good. Pancake batter. Yeah, pancake batter would be a runny thing. Then you have your thick, which is like dough-like. Okay, dough-like is the biggest problem because it looks like dough. Okay, in another example where it's not dough but it's dough-like is instant mashed potato. Right, instant mashed potato. It's a powder, whatever it is, dehydrated powder. Right, you add water to it. What happens then? It becomes mashed potato. What does mashed potato look like? Is it thin? Thick. But not only is it thick, it actually looks like dough. It's like completely one mass, right? It all looks the same. It has a thick consistency to it. But that is never going to be allowed. Okay, never. Because that is dough. It looks like little dough. Anything that has a uniform, thick consistency is what's called lela ava. It's thick. That's going to be your biggest problem. Okay, when we allow, there's going to be cases where you're allowed to make something thick. Okay, that's when it's thick, but it's not uniform like mashed potato. It's not uniform like dough. Okay, it's like your matzah meal or other things like that, where the end result is thick, but it's not going to be uniform like a dough. Okay, that's another important concept to remember.
What about oatmeal?
So what happens with oatmeal in the end? You're talking like the
water,
baby cereal? So like
yeah,
the baby
yeah.
cereal?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, something
The
like that.
baby cereal is not very thick usually. Usually they make
Right.
it somewhat runnier, somewhat thinner. Right? And even if it's thick, it's going to be considered non-uniform. It's not like mashed potato. It's not like a dough. So there is a way to do it on Shabbat. All right, and we're going to get into that next. Okay, so that is what we dealt with really last time. Okay, so a thick mixture, something that cannot be poured, and a runny mixture is something that can be poured, and it's only the Rabbanan. And a liquid is not a problem at all. Okay, so that's what we dealt with last time. If you take a look, Rabotai, that's page 113, 115, 117, we did 118 types of mixtures, thin and thick. So today we're going to start with leniencies in the case of need. Okay, this is a makom, what's called a makom tzarech. I need, page 131. I need to make this on Shabbat, right? The Taz says. B'mashnoim last b'Shabbat sinon dak dak im kashuin, right? This where they cut up very finely. Dak dak b'shayvchin achar zeh chaymetz l'taychay, right? Vein oisin shum shinoi v'nirchan lo and they're not being machmer. Kivan the afshar la'asot zeh be'erev Shabbat. They kalkel ta'amo shel tzinon. Okay, like Chichashina kivan the ikar asit b'Shabbat. Okay, ikar elchata. They came along Kabyosi Bar Yehuda. Then came Takubam Shlo Yarvenu B'Koyach Al Yidei Hakeli. So says the Taz, and you take a look at the Shar HaTzion. He quotes in the next box. He says this means a thick mixture. Okay, so someone has to make on Shabbat, take matzah meal, whatever it is, or even take this. His example is taking a vegetable that's cut very finely, so it's very fine. It's not powder, but it's very fine. And now you want to mix it with vinegar. Mix it with what happens? It becomes one big mass, becomes one big ball, right? He says even for Ashkenazim, we're usually the whole like Yehuda Nasi. Truth is, the halacha is really like Rabbi Yehuda. Ashkenazim are machmer like Yehuda Nasi. So when it comes to the Malkum Tzarech, you can hold like Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore you're allowed to do it, and you have to do it with the shinui. What's his shinui? He says here, shake the vessel, mix it, or mix it gently. Those are examples that you can do.
The avocado.
The guacamole.
Guacamole.
Right. So is it thick? It's thick, right? It's not pourable, right? It's not pourable. You can't make it in advance because it's going to come all black, all right? So, so that technically would be okay to make it on Shabbat with the shinui. Some will hold you need two shinuis, okay? The shinui, remember, two shinuis are as follows. Remember, we say two shinuis, it means one in the order of how you put it in. You usually put guacamole and then lemon juice. Then you put the lemon juice and the guacamole. And then the way you mix it, either by hand, crisscross motion, or stuff like that. We'll see what those leniencies are of how what the shinui is. But technically, you really only need one leniency over there because it's not dough-like, right? It's not dough-like in the end of the day. There's a Rav Shlomo Zalman. The Rav Shlomo Zalman, he brings me the Rabbi brings me Rav Shlomo Zalman, and he said an amazing thing here. Listen one more time. I just want to read this out and read this to you here. He says, someone wants to make a taruba shel beitzim ketushim shemarvin behem shemen or mayonnaise. Okay, the guy wants to take these eggs and he wants to make egg salad. He wants to add mayo. He wants to add oil, and it's going to become a leila ava. It's going to become thick, right? Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, he only needs one shinui. You know why? She'ein zeh be'etzem tzurat hamalacha de Lash. He says it doesn't really look like kneading. Right? What's the tzura of Lash? Ki ein b'mai says zeh hishtanot gemura b'tzuras hachamer. It doesn't change completely. When I have flour and I add water, I get dough. Right? When I take eggs and I put mayo or oil, it becomes thick, but it's the same thing. I still see it. I see it's eggs. It's not, it didn't change. What he calls it's not a panim chadoshas. It's not a tzura acheres legamre. It's not like dough. It's completely different than flour. He says, therefore, you would only need one shinui. According to Ashkenazim, you say you need two shinuis. In many of the cases, they would say you only need one in these cases where the tzura of the malacha doesn't actually look like dough. When the ava, the thickness, doesn't actually look like dough, you would only need one shinui according to Rav Shlomo Zalman. So guacamole is in that case. Egg salad is that case if it's going to become thick, right? One or two shinuis. We will say you need one, but my recommendation to one always is it doesn't hurt to do two, right? It doesn't hurt to do the order opposite and then do the and do the mixing with the shinui. In this way, with kol hadeus, you're fine. Okay, so I would always recommend to do two, even though Allah you only need one. Okay, that's one case of need. Says the Chazon Ish in source 31. Another case of need is baby food. Okay, making baby cereal, like Malkiel said. I gotta make baby cereal. I can't make it in advance. It's not going to be edible. Baby can't eat it. You have to make it before you eat it. So says the Chazon Ish, and even if you're making it thick, that's not a problem. You can do it with the shinui. You do it with the shinoi. Again, the same idea is it doesn't look like the tzur of an actual dough. Okay. The cereal is somewhat visible, I would imagine. And even if it's not, the easiest way to get away with cereal is not to make it thick, is to make it thin. Because if you come belayla raka, if you make it raka, you make it thin, everybody's okay with that. Right? Everybody holds you can make it thin. Thin is only Rabbana. So therefore you can make it thin and you do two shinois. According to Ashkenazim, we would have to do one, but even we should recommend to do two. You change the order and you crisscross motion. Make it watery and you're fine. Okay, even if it comes out a little bit thickish, you have nothing to worry about. Okay, because even by thickish, the malkum tzarech, you could do it. And we're going to throw in another one now, another kula. This kula is not; it is in the Tzurba, but it's not right at this place. If you want to take a look with me, there's another tziruf to use. Go to page 140 and footnote 32. Okay, 140, footnote 32. Page 140, footnote 32. And there's a Rashba. There's a Rashba that brings down that there's another kula when it comes to Lash. And that's the kula of miyad, of the altar, of doing it right before. Okay? Right before you want to eat. The Rashba understands that it's part of how I eat something. When I have oatmeal, I don't eat it as oatmeal. I put something in to make it liquidy, and then I eat it. But it's l'alter, it's miyad. Now we don't hold like that straight up. We don't say everything. Oh, I'm doing it right now. It's miyad. I can do it. We use it as a tziruf. We use it as in a combination. In a combination of other leniencies, you can throw in the leniency of right away. So the same thing applies by the cereal for the baby. Even if it comes out a little thick, you also have the altar. You have this point that you can do it right away, and this would be okay. But again, for baby cereal, best way, mix the order, crisscross motion, make it runny, a little bit runny, a little more watery than you do on a regular day. Okay? But if you didn't, you still have what to rely on. It's not a problem. All right, that is that case. Now, what else we up to? All right, says the Orchot Shabbat. Take a look at page 132, source 32, and Aleph over there. Like the Taz, Machal Sheyav Shalach, you know, every Shabbat, Mishum Shetamo Mitkayel, Tirla Chino B'Shabbat, like they Shishana B'Gibul. Right? The Heter Zehu Af Belayla Ava, even if it's thick. Even if it's thick, you can make it on Shabbat. Right? And it's good to make a shinoi both in the order and in the mixing. The same thing for Machal Hatinok in Bet, he says. Now listen to this one, Rabotai. Actual dough on Shabbat. Listen to this. Look at Gimel. B'shat hatchak muter l'teit mayim lekemach al yidei nochri. You could ask a guy to put water into the flour. Why? The key machine in Israel midrabanan ain't tarach l'chosh bezet l'dat Rebbe. Because really, it's what Yossi Bar Yehuda. Really, Yossi Bar Yehuda. Putting in the water is not a problem. We're chayshish. We're chayshish for Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. So therefore, don't put in the water yourself. Put it in via a guy, and it's derabbanan. It's fine. Let him put it in, and then Yisrael is allowed to come and mix it with the shinoi, right? In the shas atchak. Of course, we're not gonna want you to go ahead and make dough. Right? You can't. But if you really need it, here's a way out. Let the guy pour in the water, because that's not the issue. It's only the rabbanan. If you go into the Rambam, right? The Rabbi Yehuda holds the issue is needing it. Putting in the water is the rabbanan, right? So here, get the guy do the rabbanan, and then you can do a shino in that, and technically you can make dough. You don't do it again. Not if you need it, if you needed to. Something you needed for whatever reason. Some happens. Okay. So we talked about removing the tzura. We talked about how you can make leila ava. You can make something thick. Again, the halachic post can say thick you can make on a Shabbat if it's miyad, right? That's the tziruf of miyad. Also, it's not dough-like. It's not like mashed potato. It's not dough-like. You can see that there's pieces in there. It's discernible. It's like vegetables mixed with something else. It's like chopped liver with something else, and you can see it's not dough-like. Then you can make leila ova as well. A potato salad, yeah, that would be. It's pieces. It's not all one mass. It's not one uniform mass. That's the issue. It's uniform. Like the cleaner we're going to deal with in a moment. Okay, now we have to talk about on page 134. We have to talk about the possible shinuyim. What is considered a shinui? What's considered a change? Remember, you can't use a shinui because shinui on a Torah isser, the Doraita just makes it a derabbanan. You still can't do it. A shinui in the Rabbanan, where it changes the tzura of the malacha, would be permissible. So, what is the shinuis by Lash? So let's take a look. In the Gemara Masech Shabbat 156a and source 33, they talked about preparing bran on Shabbat for feeding his ox. Okay, and there, towards the second paragraph there, it says one moves the ladle or stirring utensil alternate strokes, crisscross motion, once back and forth, and another from side to side. Okay, so you go up and down, and then this way, that way. You're not doing circular motion. Okay, that's a shinoi in mixing.
The one thing all the time.
Shakti v'arev, which is this way and this way, instead of going in circle. Now there is a machloket poskim. Do you have to take out the spoon between each time? Meaning going this way and this way, you have to pull out the spoon and do it again, or right, or can I leave the spoon in and just move it around again and again to do the crisscross motion?
Mixing.
Usually when you mix, right? You mix like this. Right here, you're mixing go around and around. On Shabbat, you can't mix that way if you're using that shinoi. So what are you using that shinoi? No, that's not shinoi. It has to be, the result's going to be the same. So it has to be a shinoi in the mix.
So how come the left people to do bad things with the left hand?
That's not true. That's not true. Doing the left hand is not always a shinoi.
I have many times.
It's not always a shinoi. We already saw this when we talked about shinoi earlier. For example, if I usually carry with my right hand, and on Shabbat I take out something with my left hand, that's not considered a shinoi because it's still carrying. Okay, I press the elevator button with my right hand. I press the elevator button with my left hand. That's not a shinoi. Shinoi has to be a significant change. So here the Gemara says is doing it in the back and forth, side to side, this way, that way, right? So like an X motion. Okay. Now the question of poskim is: do I have to pull out the spoon between each motion, or can I continue to just move it back this way, this way, this way, this way? Okay, because if you're leaving the spoon in, you're doing more than just crisscross. So Moshe, I believe, is Mekel, and he says you don't have to pull out the spoon. Others say you have to pull out the spoon. Okay. The next thing that a person can do is what's it called? He does it by hand or by keli. Instead of mixing it with the spoon, he mixes it from cup to cup. And you only can do that once, by the way. You can't keep mixing. It has to be something that's a real shinui. So then the crisscross would be your best thing. But also cup to cup or doing it with your hand, mixing it with your hand. Because usually you don't mix with your hand. You use the finger. Usually you use an utensil. So a finger. What? Okay, if you can do it with your hand, that's a shinui. We're talking about not dough-like things. Right? We're not talking about dough-like things right now. And yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. What? Right, but we're talking about mixing other things. So just like mixing baby cereal, mixing matzah, usually you wouldn't use your hand, right? In those cases, you can use a hand. That's the shinoi over there. Now, it gets into over here a whole sugya about mustard. Okay, so there is mustard. The Gemara says, "Chardal shalashu me'erev Shabbat." It was needed on Friday. Lamachar, on the next day, memcho ben biyad ben bekeli v'noten letocha devash v'lo yitro elmar v'lo yitro elmar. You don't beat it, but you mix it gently. So here's another shinoi: mixing it gently, not doing it like you usually, but gently. That's another shinoi. But it says over here, if you did lash, if I did lash yesterday on Friday, The Gemara wants to say you can do lush today on Shabbat. Yeah. So what does this actually mean? Right. There are those who want to say is ain't lisha after lisha. There is no lush after lush.
Why?
Because once it's already been mixed and kneaded, it can't be kneaded again.
The more you do it.
Now, what's the reason for that? There's a machloket. There's a machloket poskim of what does ein lisha after lisha mean? Does it mean because what's lisha? Lisha is usually I add some water to it, right? What happens if I add more water to it?
It's going to be very diluted.
More diluted, more thinner. So it's not that ein lisha after lisha, but rather if you add more water to it, it's going to be thinner.
Not good.
So it's not lisha, ein lisha after lisha. It's rather it's going to become more diluted. Other folks can say no, because Anish is like no. If it's really been lush before, it's been kneaded before, it can never be kneaded before unless you change it. I mean, you make the look different. Okay, then it'll be an issue of lisha.
You see, if you leave it for a while, then
It hardened.
It got hard.
Right.
Then it's not
Right.
good. Then you have
Right.
to do it again.
Right. So very good. So according to the Gemara,
according to this, there is lisha halisha.
right, because the whole lisha is when you mix it thinner. But if it became harder and you make it thin, that's an actual lisha. So yeah, there is that issue as well. But again, Shulchan Aruch doesn't explain exactly what does this mean. Chardo shaloshim erev. Look at source 35 on page 135. Chardo shaloshim erev Shabbat. L'marchi yochel arvo kein ben biyad ben ikelim v'noit l'tachet davash lo yitrav l'arv v'koach el arvo mi'at mi'at. He mixes it gently. Chamo Vadia and his Chazon Vadia wants to say that this is talking about that they kneaded the mustard seed with the mustard seed juice itself and not outside juice. Okay, and that's considered lisha. Remember, Chazon said that's not lisha. Chazon said with his own juices, it's not considered lisha. It's not considered lush. You can mash something with his own juices. Chazon Vadia says no, it is lisha even with his own juices. So that there's that machloket as well. Let me just take a look what I wrote here, page 1078 in this book. That's what we got into already. The Bir Halacha and the Chazonish about the Ein Lisha Achar Lisha. Okay, so we spoke about this already. All right. Look at page 136, or Chad Shabbat. He brings you some of the more things that you can do for Shinuyim. Alternate strokes, back and forth, side to side. Another one was Lisha was mi'at mi'at, doing a little bit. Okay, if you went back, go back to this Gemara we saw. Go back to page 125. We had the kali. The kali was roasted flour, and the Gemara said you can knead it on Shabbat. And they said, who is this? Rashi Yehuda says you can add water, but he says you do it with the shinoi. And what was the shinoi? Al yad yad, which means little by little. So making by a little bit, meaning usually you make X amount, you make 100, and now you're making 5, 10, a little bit, that's considered a shinoi as well. Okay? That can be considered a shinoi as well. You take a look at the Rachat Shabbat, he says, this leniency only applies in a situation where it's clear that there's a significant alteration by kneading the small amount. Okay? One cannot permit kneading matzah meal with the shino of using small quantities. And it's difficult to say that the usual way is to prepare the mixture in large. Remember, it has to be something you usually do big, and now you're doing small. Stop to say I'm doing small, and when you always do small, it's not considered a shino. I just want to bring from the Sefer the Chayei Olamim, he brings a whole list of shinuyim. So let's just take a look at his list of shinuyim. Okay, now remember, there's always two types of shinuyim. There's a shinui in the order, right? That's one type of shinui in the order. What do you put first, right? That's one shinui. And then the second set of shinuyim is the mixing. And here is the list. A, he says, making less than you do on a weekday, right? We saw that. That was the Gemara. Crisscross manner, right? That we saw in the Gemara also. Right? And he brings in the Igot Moshe, or Moshe Feinstein. You do not need to take the spoon out of the mixture.
What
You
page?
take a look. I'm outside the Tzurba right now, but we're on page 136. You take a look at the
No,
Rachat
Rabban
Shabbat.
Axon.
Page 384. 384.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the Tzurba 136, you take a look inside. He says about the alternate strokes. Look at that aleph over there. He says, "V'yoytzi etakaf ben shati la'aretz." You go this way, you gotta pull it out. Go that way, you pull it out. Pull it out, pull it out, pull it out.
That whole deal with it.
Yeah. So Moshe says you don't have to do that. You can leave it in. You just move back and forth, but you can move it in. You can leave it in. Another shino he brings here. We saw this one already. Stirring an item that is usually only stirred in a vigorous manner, and you stir it slowly. Usually you have to do this, and you do it slowly. That's a shino. That's a shino. Mixing with one's finger or hand. Okay, stuff that usually go with a keli, moving his finger and hand. That's a shino. Wherever you're doing it, yeah. Wherever you're doing the mix. Yeah, with your finger. Usually you do it with your hand, with the keli, and now you do it with your finger. That's a shino. Pouring the mixture from one cup to another. Rav Moshe says this is only if you do it once, which is fairly impractical. You're not going to be able to mix anything. There's an argument with Moshe, but one time, shaking the container that it's in, if that's not the regular way of mixing it, right? Some salads, you mix the container. That's not a shinu, right? It has to be something that you don't usually do that way. Right? So those are the shinuyim in mixing. You're saying doing the other side of the spoon. That's not going to be considered a shinuyim mix. Because again, it's too close. It's too close to what the regular is. It has to be a significant change. The shinui has to be a significant change. It can't be I just flip around the spoon. It's still a spoon. It gives you what you want to do, right? It has that item, that ability to stir well. That's the issue, right? So your finger doesn't do that as well, right? And it's not something that you usually use. So that's the actual shinui. Okay, it has to be different from what you do. Those are the possible shinui. Okay. Now, just wanted to review this part. For us, Sephardim, you always only need to do one shinui. Halach l'maisa. Okay? Either you have to do so when it comes to a bar gibel, right? Something that's lav bar gibel, something you doesn't become one mass. So pouring in the water is never the problem. Problem will be the mixing. Therefore, the mixing has to be the shinui. When it comes to making something thin, right? So Sephardim have an option to reverse the order or to do the mixing different. Ashkenazim say when it comes to making something thin, most Ashkenazim poskim say you should do two shinuyim. The Ben Ish Chai and others are more machar when it comes to this, and therefore we would suggest to always do two shinuyim if possible. But again, the Sephardim you always do one shinui and you're good. One shinui. But you have to remember where to do the shinui. Right? Usually the mixing, if you do mixing, you do the shinui in the mix, according to Sephardim, you'll always be fine. Right? Because when it's a lav bar gibel, it has to be in the mixing. When it comes to a thin mixture, it could be either the order or it could be the mixture. So if you always do the mixture, you'll always be fine. All right. Best to always to change the order and to do the mixing when it comes to a thin mixture. Okay. Now we're on page 137. Now we're coming to practical example. Okay. So this is the beauty of learning halacha. Everything you thought you knew doesn't seem to work out right now. Okay. So we have to figure it out. So let's start. Making mayonnaise on Shabbat. Making mayo on Shabbat. Okay. So anyone know how to make mayo? Anyone actually make mayo?
Yeah, you put it. Why?
You make it?
They make it. That's how you make it.
You've seen it made? See anyone else have made it?
Eggs and oil, salt, and whatever the spices. You put it.
So let me ask you more. Is mayo thin or mayo thick? Thin, it means you can pour it out in one minute.
It's thick.
It's thick. Okay. So thick is a problem. And it's more uniform. Okay. You can say that. You can say that. It's homogeneous, right? It's possible, yeah. The companies, definitely the ones you buy from the store are, right? I don't know about homemade ones, how they come out. But it's thick. But uniform also? I mean, it all looks like one mass. But is it dough-like? Is it like mashed potato?
No.
Or it's creamy, right? So it's creamy. Okay, fine. So can you make it on Shabbat? End of story. Can I make it on Shabbat? I want to make mayo on Shabbat. So say Shmirat Shabbat Kil Chatar, renew worth. The Shabbos also leichin mayonnaise. You're not allowed to make mayonnaise, right? The gam be'asher lemayonnaise nazif. Want to make it thin? Yetiv lasot im yachin oto mibod yom. Make it on Friday. don't make mayo on Shabbat. Okay? Don't make mayo on Shabbat. Thick is definitely a problem, right? Thin, also don't do it, because you know you're gonna get thin or not, right? Don't do it. The Chazon Ovadia, now his ingredients for mayo was very surprising to me, because he has in Kardal, he has mustard in there. So I told my daughter to give me the Hellman's mayonnaise today to see what they use. They don't use mustard in it. So I don't know, maybe this is an old recipe. So mixing eggs, oil, mustard, yeah, they put mustard, sugar, and some salt. Says Chacham Ovadia, mutter. And oof tonight. Well, I know, I'm saying, but that's the one I have at home. You use the good stuff, okay? They don't use the Geffen. The Geffen's very thin, right? Sometimes they're like runny stuff. Especially you buy the light one, right? It's like water running. Mm-hmm. Doesn't taste the same.
Add more sugar, actually.
Yeah, that's usually,
Make up for the.
and that's light. Okay, so Chamabadia says you can make mayonnaise in Shabbat. You can make it, and he said, "Listen to this utnai, she'ose al dat le'achol le'altar, to eat it right away." Remember, that was the Rashba, that you have to use it by the next meal, right away to eat it. The miyat. We don't use it alone, right? You don't ever use it alone. And you don't mix it vigorously. You mix it gently. You do it with the spoon and you do it gently. Now, why does the Chacham Ovadia Lamaisa allow it? Okay, so in the Chazon Ovadia, here's the Chazon Ovadia Sefer, and in here he has like four. How many pages? I'm making mayonnaise. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5 pages, and a lot of it in small lettering, right? In explaining why it's mutar to make mayo. Okay, now I'm gonna just point out some highlights over here. He says that She'ein lahav le'er mashkin v'achad el mashum benidon dinan sh'ali dei shemosa imachadol shem nubetzim nasit b'leila racha v'kula al mishari. The Chacham Ovadia says, first of all, if you're making mayonnaise at home, it's coming out thin. It's not coming out thick. All right, if you're not doing it with a whipping machine or one of those things, it's coming out thin. It says b'leila racha. Everyone says that it's fine, but then he says, af b'leila ava, even if it's thick. Kol shenilus me'erev Shabbat, since the mustard was already considered needed beforehand, it will be able to do it on Shabbat as well. Then he says further, u'medivrei harashba ner shegam le'inyan lisha im osa al dat le'ochel le'alter yesh lahakol. If you're doing it miyad, it's okay. And he says this is also the Sefer Od David, and this is over the Eglei Ta'al and Rosh Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. They all say Sefer K'tois HaShulchan. They all say that making it altar for right away, like the Rashba, would be mutter. Okay, he says since it's coming out softish, coming out runnyish, it's not coming out thickish. You're doing it right away. It's mutar. Okay, so therefore, Chacham says it's mutar to make mayonnaise. But now later on, he writes, someone told me that to make mayo, you need a machine, and it doesn't. If you don't use the machine, it's not going to come out like real mayo. He says, "The Nevada, you can't do it on Shabbat." All right. He says, "Of course you can't do it on Shabbat." Then, all right. So he goes into this. There's a very long arichas over here. He talks about salt. Why isn't salt considered that I'm pickling, putting salt into the mayo? Right? Why is it not considered pickling? He says, "Why should it be considered pickling? It's I'm adding flavor. It's like I'm putting salt on my vegetable on Shabbat. It's I'm just adding flavor and I'm eating it. I'm not pickling." So he goes through all these different issues when it comes to making mayo. So Lamaisa, if you're making mayo, that's why I asked in the beginning, anyone make mayo? Because I've never made mayo. So I never made my own mayo. And I'll tell you something else. Even if I make my own mayo, I probably wouldn't need it. Right? I'm so used to Hellman's, mayo. It's like you can't go with something else. Okay. Preparing baby food. Baby food, we already saw. You should make it what's it called? Runny, preferable to switch the order and as well to do a crisscross motion when mixing. And even if it comes out somewhat thick, it's not really an issue. Okay. The next piece he has here is about milk powder, or Materna, Similac, whatever it is, and putting aside the Hilchot Bishul, it's not going to be a problem of lush because it comes very thin. So the same thing with milk powder and the Orletzion writes. You don't have to do anything. The next thing, the Rabbi Ribiat in 39 Melachot on page 139, source 44, talks about making mixed cocoa, right? Or powders into water. That's a davar nozzle. It's something that's very loose. It becomes it's a very runny thing. It's an actual liquid. There's no problem of lush at all. Now, Rabbi Chaim talked about preparing tahina on Shabbat. Right, Rabbi Chaim? Tahina on Shabbat. Well, how does it work in Eretz Yisrael with tahina? How do they make it? They don't buy it like us in the store. They have the paste, right?
It's coming from there.
I'm saying here we go to the store and they sell us tahina and they're ready, everything's ready. Yeah.
In my time, people that were making that.
So how do you make it? Tell me.
Open the can and you
There's a paste.
you put the paste. You put the paste. You put water on it, and you mixed it.
Okay.
And you put
So,
some.
From what you know from Hilchot Lash, do you think it would be permissible to make tahina on Shabbat or not?
If you the both liquid,
The paste is a liquid.
yeah.
It's not thick.
It's
So Rabbi Newworth, take a look at source 45. Rabbi Newworth says, you should not whip raw tahina on Shabbat because mixing it with water and stirring it, it becomes thick like dough. And even if you plan to stir it until it becomes soft, it's not going to be permissible. But if you pour a lot of liquid into it, so it never becomes thick, then it's going to be okay. So Newworth is worried if you put a little bit of water into the paste, it's still going to be very thick. And he's worried about that. So he says, pour in a lot of water, so it becomes thin right away. Doesn't have a chance to become thick. From thick to thin is permissible, always, yeah. To make something more dilute is fine. But he's saying over here, if you put in a little bit of water, it becomes thick. And then the more you mix it, the more water you put in, then it becomes thin. So he says, pour in a lot of water right away, so it goes thin right away. It never has a stage in between where it gets thick.
You put the water first, and then you put the.
He says it's not enough.
It's
not enough.
What do you mean not enough?
It's not enough. According to Newworth, it's not enough. Let's see the Menuchat Ahava. Menuchat Ahava is a Sephardic posik, and he says mutter. You're allowed to make. It's not everything's mutter, right? It's like I remember when we were in camp during the 3 weeks. Like Sephardi, you go into the shower, take a haircut, you can do everything. Like Ashkenazim can't do anything. We're like, we're fine, we're good, we can do this, right? Then they would say, "Are you even Jewish?" Right? Everything is mutter, but no, but you have to know where the halacha comes from. So he says it's permissible to prepare tahina on Shabbat by adding water, lemon, and a little salt. That was already mixed in the factory and has become a thick mixture, right? He's using this lisha after lisha, lisha after lisha. You can't use it alone, but he's like, they already mixed it in the factory, the paste that you got, right? So like a seed, right? And then you mix it's a sesame seed. What is it?
Yeah.
Sesame seed. So they need the seed. Yeah, you already did everything to it. Yeah. So he says, that's fine. And he says, so what to do? But tonight she asked the king, Samach l'suda mamish. Right? They're using that rashba again. They're using the tzir from the rashba, which is you do it right away for the suda. Hey, you're not using the whole paste. I understand that you use the paste piece by piece, right? You take a little bit out from the paste, you make some, and then you take it again later, use it again. It's one shot, you use the whole paste?
You
use a little bit.
How much you need.
Right.
You put in the car.
Yeah,
you
that's
put
fine.
water on it, and that's it.
What do you mean?
You don't get it, the whole.
You prepared it for the meal, you didn't finish everything.
Yeah.
As long as you prepared what you thought could possibly be eaten at the meal. Right? We saw that by borer as well. When it's miyad, as long as it's really possible. Not that I make saying, yeah, I'm gonna know. It's really something that I really could be able to finish.
I usually,
That didn't happen.
I usually make it in Friday, but I'm saying it's
No, it's better do it Friday. Definitely Friday. The Orla Tzion says, there's no lush here as well. What are you talking about? He says, Orla Tzion says, what's lush? When causing granules to stick together. placing flour in water. Mixing tahina with water does not involve any lush. This one does not cause parts to stick together. One adds water in order to make tahina thinner. There's nothing here. There's no pieces, no particles.
They both liquid. Also the tchina.
Right.
If you take the tchina is the jar. You do like this, it's gonna come out. It's not like it's
Right, that's what he's saying. He says there's no particles there. It's just a paste and you're making it thinner. It's no
Right,
issue
right.
whatsoever. Okay, the next issue here, the next case is pudding and jello. Okay, pudding and jello. Can one make instant mashed potato or pudding from soluble powder? So you have a powder, and you want to make a pudding. You have a powder, and you want to make a mashed potato. Now, what's the problem with the powder? Powder is more flour-like, right? It's more flour-like particles, it's granules, and it's going to become thick. Okay, so it's really very similar to the Doraita of flour and water. So another thing, remember we spoke about the uniformity of the product. The mashed potato that comes out of instant mashed potato, the pudding is possible to make thinner. Is possible. So says Rav Moshe, instant potato powder in any manner is forbidden, as it forms a thick mixture. And like we said from our remote, is that it's also uniform. It looks like dough. Here, Vinachon in his Chayolamim, in page 389, it's forbidden to make instant mashed potatoes on Shabbat by adding water to potato powder, since it combines into a mixture, into a dough-like substance. It does not help to use any shinui when it comes to instant mashed potato, because it mamish is dough-like. Okay, so anything like an instant mashed potato that you use a powder to make something thick like mashed potato is going to be off the bat right away forbidden. There's no way to make that permissible on Shabbat. Okay, making a thin mixture from an instant pudding is permitted, says Reb Moshe, when you want to make pudding, when placing the water after the powder and mixing with the shinoi, but you got to make sure it's not thick, says Reb Moshe. Okay, so you're allowed to make pudding. You reverse the order, make a shinoi in the mixing, and make sure it's thin. So everybody here, you got this one right. Right? Mashed potato, you can't. Pudding, yes. Okay, what about? Take a look at page 142, source 50. Shemir Shabbat writes, instant powders which turn into ready-to-eat solid food and not into a liquid when mixed with water, such as pudding powder, jello, or potato chips, pouring liquid onto them, or placing them in liquid is forbidden. And this is lush. So he's much more machmer. He says any instant powders is a problem. That's lush. Anything that's instant powder is an issue of lush according to Shemir Shabbat Kilchata. Now, what about jello? Jello, can you make jello? How do you make jello? No, tell me how jello works. Powder. Yeah. So what happens? I put in the water, and now what?
It's still liquid, always liquid. You have to put in the freezer. The freezer becomes.
So both of you are saying right. If you leave it, it becomes a little bit thicker, but it won't become thick until you put it into the fridge. Yeah. Okay. So now, is this an issue of lush or not?
You're not kneading that. No, you're mixing on.
Why not? Well, tell me the rationale. So you're saying that what? So Chacham says, truth is, when you put in the jello powder, it's really a davar nozel. It's liquid. It's a drink. It's like fruit punch, right? It's really a drink. Later it becomes a little thicker. That's a grumma, right? And he says the grumma is no issue over here. And then you put it in the fridge. It's nolad. It's molad. Is it not? He says already still nolad. Make ISIS okay on Shabbat. So he says for all these reasons, it's permissible to make jello. The only thing is, you have to make sure that the hot water that you're using, you're not cooking it, right? So therefore, you have to use either a kli sheni or a kli shlishi. Preferable to always use a kli shlishi. You don't have any problem. So you take the water, you put it in a cup, put it in another cup, then pour it on the jello powder, and then mix it, and then put it in the fridge, and you're good to go. You can make jello on Shabbat, according to Chumuvada. Okay, so jello on Shabbat, permissible for us. Mixing spreads. Mixing spreads. What's this? Two substances. They're not liquid, but if they stick together, they become thicker. Okay? Is that lush or not? Said the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata. It is irrelevant as a result of adding liquids. One dry and one liquid. Even if there's no liquid, but they stick together and they become thicker, says Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, it's also going to be a problem of lush. So if you have honey and you have another cream or something that they come together, they become thicker, even though there was no liquid there, says Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, that is lush. Because it becomes thicker. So Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata is very machmer. Moshe Feinstein writes, lush does not apply to mixing cream with cottage cheese. It only applies with liquid. It doesn't apply with cream and cottage cheese and stuff like that. And therefore he would say it's not. It's not an issue of lush. So and here in Rav Nachson on page 387 in Halacha 19, one may mix two thin substances together, such as yogurt and honey. Okay, mixing two substances that are not liquid is not an issue. All right, now comes an interesting one: eggplant salad. Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, Rabbi Chaim, what is salat chatzilim? Is it
Babajon.
is bojon? So
Boyjan.
bojon. Okay, so a guy made bojon, and he didn't yet put in the mayo. Can he put in the mayo on Shabbat? That's the question. Okay. Or Chad Shabbat wants to say,
Anyway, how much
Like a
you put
honey
in
and
milk?
the both thick.
okay, so let's take a look.
And you put a little. No, don't.
He says you can't do it. He says you can't do it. The Chad Shabbat says you can't do it. Okay. Now in the laws of Shabbat, you take a look at page 388 over here. He says one may add mayonnaise to a roasted eggplant and mix it, known as baba ganoush, but you have to use a shinui. But you have to do a shinui. Why have to do a shinui? I thought it's okay. So there's now another leniency that we have to talk about, which is what's called tikkun ochel, fixing my food, which means there's two issues of tikkun ochel. If I have, for example, rice, and I want to add to my rice on Shabbat tomato sauce, now it becomes a mixture of rice and tomato sauce. Is that lush? Is that lush? Is that lush? Is that called? Is that making a mixture?
So you can,
Certain rice are all separate, okay? They're not one mix. And then I put tomato sauce and it becomes all a mix now. So it says very good. It says very good. It's for taste. I'm looking for taste. So usually we say for taste is okay. But you see, by baba ganoush, there's a lot of people in the world that don't eat it before the mayo was put.
No, wow.
We do. We eat bojon without the mayo. In fact, I like bojon without the mayo. But a lot of other people in the world, a lot of other Jews, they don't eat it if there's no mayo in there. So therefore, maybe adding the mayo is completing the food. Completing the food might be a problem. It's not just taste.
Yeah, but it's not for everybody.
Therefore, he brings down over here that although eggplant is already cooked, and it'll be similar to mixing a sauce with a cooked food, which is generally permitted. In this case, you should use a shinoi, because generally people do not eat eggplant by itself. So adding mayonnaise is making the item edible. And making it edible might be a problem. So for us, right, enhancing the food. Right, it's enhancing the food, so it wouldn't be a problem. Right. So we technically could put mayo into our on, and it wouldn't be a problem.
For everybody. They not everybody likes. So
The baba ganoush or the bojon?
no, they're putting
The
the
mayo.
mayo in.
So
So it's not really tikkun. It's tikkun for one person and it's not looking for the other person.
I hear you. So I don't think we go by the person, but we go more by the people, right?
If I don't like it with for me it's not a tikkun.
Right. So like we said, for us, I think for us Sfaradim, it wouldn't be an issue, especially for those who eat raw eggplant without the mayo in there. There wouldn't be a problem with adding mayo. Okay. Now we come to our last few halacha l'maaseh about lush. Let's see here. What about making a vegetable salad and adding page 145 and adding salad dressing? Okay, to talk about a few different types of vegetable salad. So talking about vegetable salad with big pieces. Why would that be permissible?
Recognizable.
Everything's recognizable. Chatito gedolot, everything's recognizable. It's not one mixture. It's okay. What about if it's smaller? What about if it's smaller?
For taste, the dressing is only for taste.
Uh-huh. What else? Here. Says the Sefer Chai Olamim, it's permitted to place mayonnaise or salad dressing on a salad, even if the salad consists of finely chopped vegetables or of potato chunks, right? So it's very fine, very fine. So now that you're mixing it, it really looks like a mixture is coming about. Still, you're allowed to do this. Why is that? Remember, we're coming back to like what Hamavaji said about making the mayo, right? It's already perhaps ein lisha acher lisha, right? There's no lush after lush. We don't always say it, but it's possible to say it. Also, you have the miyad. We don't always say that, but you have that tzurba over here as well. And then he says, this is going back to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, where it's not the tzura of the malacha. It doesn't really look like dough. Remember? So if it doesn't really look like dough, then you can use one shinui and you'll be okay. You'll be okay. So with all these tzirufs, all these opinions, you can make a combination of them, and therefore he writes, it's permitted to place mayonnaise or salad dressing on a salad, even if it's finely chopped on Shabbat. So there's no lush issue.
Salad dressing is not a tikkun.
Say again?
With mayonnaise.
No. No, because
some people they can eat the salad without it.
yeah, but we don't go by the individual. We go by the people, the right of the people.
Before we say it's the tikkun for with a baba ganoush.
For those for Ashkenazim, right? For those who cannot eat bojon, can't eat the eggplant without the mayo, and then it's a tikkun ocher for them. For us, we can. Our group, it wouldn't be. But for the individual, we wouldn't look at that. Most people can eat salad, raw salad without the salad dressing, so it's not considered a tikkun. Same thing he says in source 57, chopped egg or tuna can be mixed with mayonnaise in the usual order. But again, if it's fine, the Ashkenazim will want you to make a shinoi. With the crisscross, right? Mixing it with a knife or with the handle is not permitted, right? We saw that already. Just turning it around is not permitted. It's not the shinoi. Shinoi is the shinoi in the mixture, not on how you use the keli. Egg or tuna. Also, same story. Okay, just two other halachot quickly. So we saw that making a thick mixture is sometimes permissible. You have to change to add water, matzah meal, permitted to add water or some other liquid into in the following condition. The thick mixture, the one who makes only a small amount, right? We saw that you make a small amount. That's one of the chinois of making in a small amount. If it's watering, you have more leniency. Egg salad, mashed liver. Again, they're using the tziruf of the rashba, even though it's thickish. If you do it before the meal, then it should be okay. The svar of the rashba into a tziruf, that would be okay as well. So, Rabotai, I'll just end off again, like the Al-Kutra said in the beginning. When it comes to Hilchot of Lash, there's a lot of flying particles, so to speak, a lot of flying, moving pieces at the same time. Therefore, it would always be good to ask. And just give a case in point. Rabbi David Natanelli asked me about his chickpea and putting water on it on Shabbat to give the chickens, if that would be a problem of lush or not. So it's not a bar gibel. Adding water wouldn't be the problem, but can you do it on Shabbat or not? So we asked two poskim that night, last Sunday night. We sent that same question to two poskim. We send one to Rav Shai Tahan, and we send one to Rav Yigal Chaimel. Okay? Right. So listen to both answers, and just to show you how, when it comes to lush, the different of approaches we'll take. Okay, so here is Rabbi Chaimel, right? So Yigal Chaimel, Shlita, he writes as follows. Okay, I asked him as follows. Can he add water to grain to help the chickens eat it on Shabbat? Would he be able to mix it? Says Rav Chaimel, he has to do it before Shabbat. That's it. Like, don't even bother with doing it on Shabbat. Let's go to Rav Shai Tahan. Okay. Rabbi Shai Tahan, he writes, make it liquidy, right? You make it raka, you make it softish, you make it liquidy. So then you can do it. Obviously, do it with the shinoi, right? And so you'll have that different of approach of how to do it because you don't want to deal with lush. It could be a deraita, the machmer like Yehuda Anasi, even adding water is a problem. So therefore, if you have a question on what lush is, always good to ask beforehand. So we went through the principles. We finished block of lush. Stay tuned. If next week we're going to have a shir or not, we'll know. It's a Sunday after Shabbat Nachamu, so we'll see how it plays out. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.